Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. Last week we finished up Jonah, and now we're going to go on to the book of Daniel for the next few weeks. So if you have your Bible, want to turn to Daniel chapter 1, that's where we will be today. So the book begins, verse 1, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, onto Jerusalem and besieged it. So Nebuchadnezzar comes to Jerusalem and he besieges, he takes captive the city of Jerusalem. And when he does that, he takes back with him some of the young men who had promise, the healthy young men who could learn, who could do things, who were strong, and he took them back with him. Well, uniquely, just to know, in verse 2, it says, "And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with part of the vessels of the house of God." So boys and girls, sometimes we read things or we see things happen in life around us and we feel almost like God lost control. Daniel and his friends that we're going to study might have felt like that. Like, how could God let this happen? But verse 2 is quick to tell us that God allowed it to happen, that the Lord gave over Jerusalem. God had some lessons for them to learn. So this didn't happen without God knowing about it. Well, Nebuchadnezzar has a man who works for him, Ashpenaz, and he says, all right, I want you to oversee these different people that we've captured, and I want you to train these young men, gather the best of the best. And I want you to train them. Verse 3, "And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans." So Nebuchadnezzar says, basically gather the best of the best, and we're going to teach them and train them here in the palace. And he offered for the meat that was served to him at his table to be served to these men. He offered the drinks, the fine drinks that he was going to drink were to be offered to these men who were there. And he wanted the best of the best for these men because he actually wanted them to help him rule and lead his kingdom with the knowledge that they had. Well, Daniel, he sees the food that's prepared for him, and he sees what's been given to him, and he realizes as an Israelite, he should not be eating this food, and he should not be drinking this drink. Well, verse 6 says, "Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego." So they had their names changed. It's thought to basically be kind of just changing their mentality. You're no longer Israelites. You're now part of Babylon. But the men had, no good for them. God had taught, or Daniel and his friends had been taught about God. They knew God personally, and they knew what was right and what was wrong when it came to the food and the drinks and what they were supposed to have. So, verse number 8, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portions of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself." Boys and girls, Daniel made a decision, and he said, I'm not going to defile myself. I'm far away from home. My parents will never know. All of this has happened to me. Daniel could have come up with so many excuses. This isn't fair. I'm not at home. Surely God would understand. But Daniel doesn't make those excuses, boys and girls. He purposes that even though mom and dad aren't there, even though he's not at home, even though he got a raw end of the deal, he is going to do what's right, boys and girls. We don't see Daniel complain about his situation. we see that Daniel chooses to do what's right, even though it's going to be difficult. Well, he asks Ashpenaz, he says, is it okay? We're not okay with eating this meat. And Ashpenaz is a little worried about this decision. And then there was a man who was kind of just over them. Ashpenaz was higher up, Melzar. He goes to Melzar. He's like, all right, can we have a 10-day trial? For 10 days, can we eat just vegetables and drink just water? And if we still look healthy after 10 days, all is good. If we don't, then we understand. Because Melzar and Ashpenaz were worried for their own lives if these men did not look strong and healthy. If they started to look sickly from just eating vegetables, it was going to be bad news for both of those leaders because they're supposed to be taking care of them. So Melzar says, all right, 10 days. You have 10 days. Just eat vegetables and drink water. Most of us are like, ooh, no, it does not sound fun at all. But Daniel and his 3 friends, which we typically refer to them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but those would be the names that they were given, not the names that their parents gave them. But the 4 of them decided that for those 10 days, they were going to only eat vegetables. Well, boys and girls, what do you think happens after 10 days? Did God neglect them and say, yeah, you're going to look sickly? No, God blessed them, boys and girls. In verse 15, it says, and at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portions of the king's meat. So they looked healthier, okay? They didn't look skinny and gaunt and sickly. They looked quite healthy. So the Melzar is like, all right, I'll take away the king's meat. I'll take away the wine. You can continue to keep the lifestyle that you want and honor your God. God gave them knowledge and skill in their learning. Okay, verse 17 tells us that their knowledge and skill came from God. God was at work in their lives, even though they were in an enemy's country. In verse 18, it says, now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. They were considered to be the smartest, the best of the best. And so the king he's glad about this. He's thankful this has worked out well, and he gives them positions of authority. And Daniel actually stands out even more so as an interpreter of dreams. But before I get ahead of myself, that's next week's lesson. But God blesses those who honor him. Daniel and his 3 friends chose to honor God, and God blessed them. It is important to do right, boys and girls, whether life is going well or life doesn't seem to be going well. Okay, it doesn't seem like things are working out. It's important that we do right no matter what, and we don't make excuses for not doing what's right. It's important we do right even when there isn't an adult around to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to.